Still got more coming in, so we're going to give it a couple more minutes to get started. And for everybody logging in too, please be aware that as I'm presenting, feel free to chat your questions into me. Happy to answer them. We're also gonna cover that at the end too. Lots of time for questions. So today is to help you. So let me know what you need help with. All right, Clay, we seem to be pretty good. Do you want to kick it off?
Sure, I'll kick it off. 1 second. And hang on, I'm looking for my record button. Nope, I guess we're already recording.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to the Velocity webinar series. I want to thank, so today we're talking about social media. So we have Erica Linguanti, who's our Director of Marketing here at Achieve. She's going to carry on similar conversation what we had with Meredith last week, where we're talking about how to get everything ready for this upcoming fundraising season and event season with basically some tips on how to get your social media cleaned up and make sure you're ready to get going. And then there'll be, at the end of her presentation, she'll talk about some other webinars coming up where you can get into some more of the nitty gritty social media details. The presentation will last 30, 40 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So if you have questions, please feel free to enter them in chat, and I will relay those to Erica at the end of the presentation. So a couple of housekeeping items. You can find out more information about the webinar series and some of the additional ones on our website. The links there highlighted in yellow. I want to send a special thanks out to Christine Raymond at Extraordinary Charities for helping make this happen, as well as Ann Caroline at Great Charity Challenge. And then also want to thank some of our presenting sponsors, our fellow presenters, the Dream Team, Lemon Light, and QGive, who you'll hear from next week, or later this week, actually. And finally, so we're recording the webinar. We'll make that available, should be available around the time at the end of the webinar series, so sort of the end of next week. Please ask your questions in the chat box, and I'll make sure to relay those off to Erica. And you can find more resources on our website at achieveclouds.com/resources. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Erica and let her take over. So go ahead, Erica.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hop off video really quick so I can share my screen, and then I'll be back for questions. But again, as Clay mentioned, at any time, just chat in your questions to me, and we'll make sure we answer them, okay? Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen, Clay?
Yes, we can see it fine.
All right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. So today we're gonna talk about bringing it all together, how to audit your social media efforts and avoid some common mistakes. So if you've been following along with us for the past few sessions, you should have talked to Saral about how to do your research for your upcoming fundraising efforts. Some really great presentations from Laura and Cheryl about finding your brand messaging and your brand design and your logo. And then Meredith last week should have talked to you about how to translate all of that onto your website. It's an easy kind of do-it-yourself, 3 ways to clean up your website before fundraising season. So today, kind of carrying that over, how are we gonna translate all of that onto social media? So again, as Clay mentioned, my name is Erica Linguanti. I am the Director of Marketing at Achieve. We are a digital agency for nonprofits. So we specialize in causes, and we work with a lot of different people across the country, but especially here in Palm Beach County. Primarily, we do digital marketing and social media marketing, as well as web design and web support. So if you need help with any of that, feel free to check us out at achievecauses.com. Our website also has a ton of free resources for you from our blogs and podcasts, checklists, downloadables, research, all kinds of fun stuff for free. So feel free to check that out. And then today, if social media has you feeling stressed, especially in 2020, which I know it's been a tough year, let's try to help get you calm, cool, and collected, okay? So today, we're going to take inventory of your social media channels. We're going to help you find your engagement rate for future benchmarking. I'm going to talk a little bit about some free tools that you should be taking advantage of. We're going to talk through some common social media mistakes that I see a lot of our clients making all of the time and just sort of how to avoid that. And then absolutely, again, if you have questions, feel free to chat those in. Clay is going to stop me. We're going to have time at the end. Want to make sure I'm answering everything you guys need help with. So before we get started, let's take inventory of your social media channels. Whenever I sit down with a new nonprofit client, this is always an exercise that we do, and there always seems to be some inconsistencies. So, when's the last time you really sat down and took inventory of all of your social media channels? Which ones are you on? Do you have a YouTube channel that was created a long time ago that nobody is really using? What's in your portfolio? So that's kind of step one, figuring out where you already have accounts. And then the second one is, how often are you posting? I often find that's another area that's really inconsistent. Of maybe you're posting on Facebook all the time or Instagram, but your Twitter has kind of fallen by the wayside and nobody's tweeted in a few years. LinkedIn, you had one post back when you were hiring and that's it, right? So kind of taking a look at what you're working with. That's step one. And then from there, do you need tech support? And this always comes up again. Anytime I sit down with a new client, a lot of times maybe you have some duplicate accounts, on Facebook, you can merge those together. Maybe you have duplicate accounts. Maybe you had multiple Twitter accounts for different services once upon a time, and that doesn't make sense anymore. So kind of take inventory of what do you need to be combined or get rid of. And then another one, which seems like a no-brainer, but often we run into issues, is do you have the admin access that you need? Do you have the passwords to everything? A lot of times there's usually one or two straggler accounts where, maybe a business manager is claiming your Facebook page that a former staff member had created, and now you don't have access to that business manager. So you have access to your Facebook page, but you're not really owning the page. So you're limited on different support things that you need to do. You probably need to reclaim that, or, maybe your Twitter, you don't have your password anymore and you need to reset it. So kind of take inventory of do you have everything you need to even just log in and do what you need to do. I get asked this a lot, so I did want to include some URLs to kind of help out. These are some of the best links to help you get support tickets started. For Facebook, they do offer a couple different types of support. You can email. Usually that's going to take a couple days to get a response, or you can actually live chat someone through Messenger. A lot of people don't realize this. You do need to have an ad account to do that. But if you follow that link and you go to submit a request for support, if you say you're having issues with your ad account, you can get to somebody on Messenger chat and talk to them, even if it is unrelated to your ads manager. So that's really nice to talk to somebody in real time. I will say with Facebook, can be a little bit cumbersome dealing with support. I certainly have sunk many days of my life going back and forth with support to help resolve different issues. But they can usually get pretty much anything resolved. Even if you are locked out of your original Facebook page for your nonprofit, you can actually regain it by submitting a notarized document to them, various things. So they are there to help. It might take a little bit of time, but it's worth the effort. So that's a great one. Twitter is a little bit more straightforward. You can submit a ticket through the link there. LinkedIn, two different ways to get in touch with them. You can email, but you can also live chat as well. So when you go to that page, at the very bottom in teeny tiny print, it says live chat next to the LinkedIn logo. If you click on that, you can actually talk to someone in real time as well. So if you're struggling with any of these things, definitely worth taking a couple hours of your time and get things resolved by going to respective channels directly. Another thing that I always recommend that people do is kind of take a step back and compare all of your channels as a whole. Are you being consistent? Are you using the same logo on all of your different channels? Is your logo cropped correctly? A lot of times I find on Facebook there's cropping issues because now the profile image is a circle. It hasn't been updated in a while. You know, are you cropping part of your logo off? Do you need to resize that for Facebook? You know, just kind of taking a look. Does everything match? Do you have, you know, the same ideally, or if not the same, at least cohesive handles, or are your handles all over the place where it's going to be kind of hard for people to search for you? Is your contact information up to date? I see this one a lot. You know, the channel got set up years ago. You haven't thought about, oh, that's telling people to email an email account that we don't use anymore, or, oh, that's not our phone number anymore. So making sure that that's consistent. And then also, you know, is your about information consistent? You know, did you just go through sort of a rebranding and reposition what your organization is going to do? Does your, you know, bios and your about information mirror that? So that's just kind of the first step. It's not fun, but just taking a step back and looking at your social channels with fresh eyes and saying, is this consistent? Does this make sense? And if not, going through and just tweaking some of those things. Maybe you can change your social handles so they all match, or just swapping in the profile images. So that's my advice there. Any questions, Clay, before we keep moving forward?
Nothing yet.
All right. Again, if you have any questions, definitely ping me and let me know. So now we've gone through kind of the simple going through and just cleaning up your social channels. It's going to help you find a way to find your engagement rate. Now, this is the point where everyone usually starts to ask me, but what about followers, Erica? And that's great. Follower growth is a good metric to have. But for me personally, as a marketer, I've found that engagement rate is much more important to me. It's not all about followers. I would rather have 100 people that really care about the mission and advocate for me versus 10,000 people that don't actually care about my cause. So that's kind of why I have a pretty heavy emphasis on engagement rates. So to find that, there's all kinds of software that you can pay for that will sort of automatically report for you. But even just a really simple exercise to find your baseline, go ahead and, you know, maybe add up all of your posts from the past couple weeks and find your engagement rate. So you're going to add up for each individual post how many likes, comments, and shares you had. Those are your engagements. Then you just divide it by your followers, and then you multiply by 100. It's pretty easy. So this is an example of a post that we had. So dividing the engagements divided by followers gave us an 8% engagement rate. Now, if you wanted to be more nitty-gritty about this, you could actually divide it by the number of people reached versus your followers, because again, just because you're posting doesn't mean that the algorithm is making it show up in other people's feeds, right? So you could do that as well. But rule of thumb, I'm a little bit more old school. I like to take total followers, because that's going to also give me insight to, you know, out of everyone, where am I at? Versus the algorithm that's sort of constantly changing, where one post, maybe it's reaching 1,000 people and then another one only 300 people saw it, right? It gets a little nitty gritty. So I like to standardize it personally, but there's a lot of ways to find engagement rates. This is just the formula that tells me the most. I would say in general on social media, especially Facebook, 4 to 7% is average for engagement rate of sort of goals that I would recommend. I would imagine for a lot of people it's lower than that. Because the algorithm really has changed in the past couple of years, especially on Facebook. Only about 1 to 3% of your followers will even organically see your content. So unless you're doing some paid spend, or you know, you've got a really good content mix going and consistently getting a lot of shares from your supporters and things, it's probably going to be harder to reach people. So if your engagement rate's really low, no big deal. But I would recommend trying to get it up to maybe 3-4% if you're at 1 or 2. But rule of thumb for our clients, 4 to 7% engagement rate's good. Anything above that, you're crushing it. You're doing great. So kind of a good benchmark there. I really like engagement rates as well, because sometimes it shows me when something is reaching people outside of my network. So this is a really good example from achieve, where we actually had more engagements than followers. So that means that the hashtags we were using were working, the imagery was working, something people were engaging with. So that can be really helpful as well, especially on Instagram. Any questions before I keep moving forward, Clay?
So the one question came up, which is, you know, how do I fix my engagement rate if it's really low?
Yeah, so we're going to dive into that in a couple slides from now. I've got some advice on that, so I'm going to put a pin in that. I also see another question saying, can you change your social handles? So ours are not consistent among social platforms. So yeah, you absolutely can change your social handles. Depending on the platform, it might be a little bit more difficult, but if you go into your settings on Instagram or Twitter, you can definitely change your social handles. You may be limited on those platforms if someone already has the handle you want. So definitely search that before you go ahead to change them all. Search and see if what you want to change it to is even available. And if not, it might make sense to change your handle across the board. Facebook as well, when you go into your page settings, you can also change what your handle is. So yes, that would be how. Hopefully I answered that correctly. Any other, or clearly, any other questions that came through, Clay?
None so far. I think people are waiting to see what happens next.
Following along. All right. So next section, want to talk about some free tools that you should be leveraging. So this is where we're going to get into some of the setup to make sure you're ready to go for your fundraising this fall. First one is going to be pre-scheduling your content and using some schedulers. So there's tons out there. I pulled 8 just really quickly, but I mean, there's dozens and dozens. Some of them are really affordable, like Later or Buffer or Planoly, but others, I mean, Falcon is thousands and thousands of dollars a year. So there's tons out there. However, I think for most nonprofits, what makes the most sense is if you're heavy on Facebook and Instagram, Facebook Creator Studios is going to be your best bet. It's completely free. It works exactly like Facebook in terms of how it interfaces, so it should look really familiar to you. You can schedule content, you can save drafts, you can respond to your Facebook messages and your comments and your Instagram comments and your direct messages right from the same platform. So that's a really good one for free. Another one that I really like to use is Hootsuite. Hootsuite can do it all, especially if you have the paid plan, but I do like to divide them out, and I tend to lean towards Facebook Creator Studios for Facebook and Instagram, and then, you know, Twitter or LinkedIn or some of the others I use Hootsuite for. But here's just kind of a few for some recommendations. I really like to pre-schedule content because it helps you be more proactive versus reactive. You know, if you're at a nonprofit, you're probably wearing a lot of different hats and you're trying to do a million different things, and it's really easy to forget to post on social media if you're doing it sort of spur of the moment. So I would definitely recommend sitting down and building out a content calendar. You know, if you really don't have a ton of time, maybe building out 2 weeks at a time or maybe a month if you can. Recognizing there's still maybe pop-ups that happen, some one-off things that are timely that you need to put into your mix, but having some of this stuff pre-scheduled and ready to go is definitely going to help you instead of realizing, oh my gosh, it's Thursday, I haven't posted in 7 days, what the heck am I talking about? And then you're just throwing something up that's maybe not impactful. If you pre-schedule, you can think about your actual messaging and what you need to be talking about or want to be communicating to people. That's some free tools for pre-scheduling. The next big one is going to be the Facebook donation account. So this is completely free. There's no processing fees. You can do a lot of different things with it. You can do fundraisers on your page. People can do fundraisers for you. You can add a donate button to your profile so people can donate directly through the app to you. You can fundraise through live streams, which is going to be great with virtual events coming up. You can also add that donate button to post, which sometimes I wouldn't recommend doing it for every single post, but for certain ones that may make sense for you. To get that set up, it's actually really easy now. They've simplified it. So you just go to facebook.com/donate/signup. There's 2 different options. You can set up a payout account that Facebook is going to kind of send you a check every 45 days. It's through Network for Good. I wouldn't recommend that. It's a little bit limited on the features that it has. I would recommend setting it up with your organization's banking information. That's going to let you export your donation log from Facebook. You're going to get the payouts much faster. And as a bonus, you can also take advantage of Instagram's giving tools, because remember, Instagram is owned by Facebook. They're kind of one and the same in that regard. So you can have people fundraising for you through Instagram stories, or you can add that donate sticker to your stories. You can add a donate button to your Instagram profile. So again, people can just donate to you straight through the app. They don't have to go anywhere. Let's make it simple. You can also fundraise through live stream now as well. They rolled that out this year, which is really exciting. If you don't have those things set up on Instagram, but you already have your donation account, feel free to follow these bit.ly links that I included that has some setup instructions of how to add that button or how to use the live stream feature. You can also always go on Facebook support itself, has tons and tons of resources there for you about how to use Facebook giving tools. I will say, you know, certainly for the bulk of your fundraising, you're probably still going to be driving people to your website. But certainly, you know, this doesn't hurt you to get this set up, even if you don't plan to use it today. Better to have your Facebook donation account set up for when you're ready to use it instead of trying to scramble at the last minute if you decide you want to take advantage. So that's really good. Another recommendation that I would have for you would be to install a Facebook pixel on your nonprofit website. Now, what is a pixel? I get this question a lot. I pulled straight from Facebook. This is what Facebook says. A Facebook pixel is a small piece of code that goes on your website. And that's it. Basically, it's like a cookie. It's going to track people that are on your site and what actions they're taking. Really, really impactful on the advertising side of things. You can retarget people who've been on your site or have donated to you. So it doesn't cost you anything to install that. And even if you don't plan to use it today, definitely good to start tracking, because you're going to have all that historical data that you can use if you're ready to do a promotion for your virtual event and you want to do some advertising or you want to do some fundraising. So that's another one. If you need kind of the step-by-step of installing it on your site, I included the link as well for manually installing the Facebook Pixel. Now with Pixel, there's a lot of different events that you can set up. So things like adding something to your cart or purchasing something or completing a form or signing up for a newsletter, right? So you may need to work with your IT department or your web company to get some of that set up. But as a bare minimum, I would recommend just putting your standard pixel on your site, so at least you're tracking your web traffic in case you ever want to retarget people. So bare minimum, get the standard pixel in there, and then if you want to do specific campaigns, you can try to set up the actual events as well to track. If you are not sure if your website already has a Facebook pixel, there is a Chrome extension called Facebook Pixel Helper that's super, super easy. All you have to do is install it, and then when you click that little extension, it will tell you if it's detecting pixel data or not on your website. So if you're not sure if you have a pixel set up, install that Chrome extension, take a look, and if you don't, then you have an action item to go set that up. And if you do have a pixel but you don't know who has access to it or where it was created, at least now you've got some data so you can kind of go hunting within your organization and make sure you have access to everything. And this is just kind of a call out. I know today we're talking more about social media, but I did want to call out just in general, when we talk about online fundraising and online events, you should always, always, always be tracking where your web traffic is coming from. Facebook Pixel can help you with that. Google Analytics, you should definitely have, that can help. Google Tag Manager, that's another one. Using your tracking links. I use tracking links for pretty much everything. Google URL Campaign Builder is great, because even if I'm going to run a Facebook post, I want to create a special link so I know that that came from Facebook, my clicks, right? And you can kind of combine those. Sometimes I'll do a long Google URL Campaign Builder URL, but then I'll toss it into bit.ly so I can get that nice, clean, shortened vanity URL that's going to be easy for people to remember and easy to understand. It's not going to look so cluttered and clunky, but I'm still tracking on the back end where my traffic's coming from. Same thing with email. You should always be tracking where your traffic's coming from so you know what's working and what isn't. So homework, again, Here's kind of a freebie for you guys. There is an online giving checklist on our website. Feel free to download that and kind of run through. Again, I know today is more about social media, but all of this ties together. All of this is multi-channel. So if you want to do that, that's some homework for you. Go download it, take inventory, see how your website stacks up, and see if there's anything you need to set up. But before we keep going, any questions from that section, Clay, that we want to talk about?
Yeah, there were a couple questions, actually. First one was, this is a good one, do I need to post every day?
Yeah, so I would say no. More is more, but, you know, what are you really getting out of those efforts? You know, I would say kind of rule of thumb, 3 to 4 times a week is going to be good. I also will say just a little bit of my background. I actually come from luxury hotel marketing world, specifically on social media. And what I found, especially with some of the really big resorts I worked with, they would want to post all the time, you know, every day or multiple times a day, because they want to promote all these different restaurant outlets and specials and everything. And the ones that were posting too much, their engagement rates plummeted because it was just too much. The followers kind of were tired of it, and it was the same thing over and over, and they unfollowed. So I would say quality over quantity is usually your best bet. There's been a lot of studies that have happened over the years. Different big agencies have done it. We've kind of done some mini ones in-house at Achieve. And if you're posting too much, it usually your engagement rate's lower. So I would say 3 to 4 times a week is usually optimal for people. There may be exceptions to that. You know, if you're ramping up to Giving Tuesday, it might make sense for a week or two to be really, really active on social media, posting every day, multiple times a day. If you're doing a Day of Giving event, obviously you're posting multiple times throughout the day. I think it also depends on where you're posting. So like Facebook stories and Instagram stories, those you can have going all the time. So if you have stuff you want to say, toss it up. Every day, multiple times a day, that's great. But the physical posting probably don't need to be quite so often. I will say the exception is Twitter. If you are really Twitter heavy, Twitter is going to be really, really big on one-on-one conversations. So to be really successful on Twitter, you usually do need to be active and posting multiple times a day. But that's also because the shelf life of a tweet is just much, much smaller than a Facebook or Instagram post where, you know, for me on my feeds, I'm seeing stuff from a few days ago sometimes on my Facebook feed, whereas Twitter, that's really in real time. So after a couple minutes, your tweet, unless it's gone viral, is sort of gone. Whoever has seen it, and that's it. So there's some exceptions, but I would say rule of thumb, probably 3 to 4 times a week is a good starting point. If that's too much for you, if you're, you know, a development team of 1 and you're drowning right now, you know, maybe can you commit to doing 2 posts a week consistently? Consistency is going to be better than trying to make yourself crazy doing a ton of volume.
And I would say it's also, it's a good reason to use the scheduling tools, right? Because you can literally map out, spend an hour and map out, you know, 2 posts a week for the next month.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. Okay, so we have one more question on the Facebook stuff, which was how do I download contacts from Facebook for my donations or contact information from Facebook?
Yeah, so that's going to be in your settings section of your Facebook page. If you want to email me, my email is Erica, ERICA, @achievecauses.com. Whoever had that question, feel free to email me and I can actually send you some screenshots of where to find it. But it is in your settings section. There's a tab on the left-hand side of your Facebook page. I believe it says fundraisers. You can click that and there's a way to download. But again, feel free to email me. My email is erica @achievecauses.com and I'll just send you some screenshots so you can find it. I do see one more question before we keep it moving. It says, if you use Hootsuite, do you schedule separately as tags are not consistent across the board? Yes, and this is true for all channels, even Facebook and Instagram. If I'm using Creator Studios, just because I might be posting the same content on both platforms, my captions are still probably going to be different because of just kind of user behavior. On Instagram, I probably want to toss in some hashtags, whereas on Facebook, hashtags aren't usually overly impactful for you. And in some cases, if you're using too many on your Facebook post, your engagement rate drops. So yeah, in general, I would always schedule separately for each channel. It's also nice too, because sometimes I might want to repurpose content, but I'm going to share something on Facebook on a Monday, but I don't want to share it on Instagram for a couple days. So it gives me some flexibility there as well. So yes, I would schedule separately, and really good point about tagging, especially if you have community partners or sponsors or other people that volunteers that you want to tag. It's not going to translate across all your platforms. So you're better off scheduling separately and tagging people separately for the respective channels. All right, any other questions before I keep it moving, Clay?
All set, keep going.
All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit more tactically of how to discuss how to avoid some common social media pitfalls. This will help with the engagement rates a little bit too if you're struggling with that. So first piece of advice, and we've already talked about this a little bit, is be strategic. I always like to develop annual social strategies based on your high-level marketing strategies for the year. So taking a step back at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the quarter, and really looking at the calendar saying, okay, these are the time of year that I need to really be focusing on fundraising. You know, the summer is a little bit slower for us usually, so that's a good time to focus on awareness, etc. So kind of mapping out from a high level what I need to hit on throughout the year. And then from there, thinking about what your goals are. You know, what are your goals for social? Are you trying to raise awareness for your organization? Are you trying to educate people about your mission? Do people not really understand what you do? Do you need to grow your number of volunteers? Are you trying to increase online donations? Or sometimes, are you trying to serve a specific community? There's some organizations we work with where their social media channels are not actually talking to donors, it's talking to the people that they serve to provide them resources. So figuring out, you know, what your goals are for social media helps. And then when you're going ahead and you're planning out your content for the next couple of weeks or your month, the first place I always look at is, are there key dates to consider? Do you have any virtual events that need to be promoted? Are there any giving days that you're participating in? As a heads up, Giving Tuesday is on December 1st this year, so that's coming up quick. Do you have a plan in place? And then also, are there relevant days or weeks of the month? There's certainly all kinds of cause-related, you know, months. Like right now, we're in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. You know, World Suicide Prevention Day was back in September. There's Women's Health Week. There's all kinds of things that probably tie into your mission. But beyond that, too, there's a lot of fun social media holidays like Taco Day or National Margarita Day or whatever. I wouldn't go crazy with those, but if you're ever stuck on some content or you just want to do something a little more fun, maybe pull one or two for the month if you're planning out your content. But most importantly on social, when you're planning out your content, if you're struggling with engagement, try to think about who you're talking to. You know, social media, it's a two-way conversation. It's not like television where you're just talking to somebody and they're consuming it. You want the give and the take. So who are you talking to? Do those people already understand your mission? If not, some of your content probably needs to be educational, explaining what you do and why you do it and what the problems are. You know, are you only self-promoting, or are you making it more about your supporters or who you're talking to? Are you sharing impact stories? Are you crediting that success to your supporters? Cross-promoting is always great. So we've talked about this, but especially with virtual events coming up, tagging your sponsors, not only in the post, but making them a co-host of your Facebook event, tagging them within copy in the event, etc. Also, repurposing content is great. I see this as a missed opportunity for a lot of our clients is Instagram. A lot of past volunteers or donors or people that have attended your events are tagging you in content, you know, public posts, and then they're just sitting there. That's great content to be reused. In the marketing world, we call that UGC, user-generated content. And UGC usually gets 10 times more engagement than other types of content. So, you know, instead of trying to scramble and figure out something to talk about on a Tuesday and try to find a photo for it, if you have this great photo from a past event that a donor uploaded, maybe you want to repost that and tag them, and you can add whatever caption makes sense for it and then just give them photo credit. They'll probably really appreciate the shout out, and it's going to give you a variety of content that's going to feel less promotional and more like a community coming together. So that's really good. If you're ever making an ask as well in your copy, make your call to action clear. So if you're doing a Facebook post and you want someone to donate to you, make that really simple of donate here, or add a donate button to your profile, to the post itself. If you want someone to sign up for your newsletter, sign up here, give them a nice clean bit.ly URL, right? There is another option as well that can help you if you're struggling with engagement rates, is with Facebook Creator Studios, you can actually A/B test your posts. So if you have a post and you're not sure if a photo of kids smiling at the camera or maybe kids not looking at the camera and doing an activity is going to be more impactful, you can actually run that post against each other. So Facebook algorithm, if you use the test feature in Facebook Creator Studios, you can post it and it's going to serve both posts or one version of the post to different people who follow you. And then you'll be able to see which one people engaged with more. So that can help you in the future as you kind of keep moving forward and you figure out what's most engaging for you. That's a nice tool to do it. Also calculating your engagement rates. So going through and seeing what were your top posts from the month. Are there any commonalities? What are your top posts for the year? Top 5 or top 10 posts? Is there something in common? Is it when you're telling a story or a testimonial versus, self-promoting, at XYZ organization, we believe in blah, 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 right? Make it about who you're talking to would be my biggest piece of advice. And test it out, test and learn, look at the data, do the A/B testing with the Creator Studio scheduling, calculate your engagement rates. That's going to tell you what's working and what isn't, right? Another thing, especially as we're going into fundraising season, I'm sure a lot of your social posts are going to be a little bit more direct in terms of asking for support in some way. Whenever you're doing this, try to put your donor hat on and remember why people give. Typically, people give because they recognize there's a problem, and it's usually a problem that they have an affinity for. They believe that your organization is working towards a solution, and they feel that by supporting you, they're going to be part of that solution, right? So when you're coming up with your copy and your marketing messages, try to think about why people would give to you and approach it from that direction versus, we need to raise $30,000 by Giving Tuesday. That doesn't really tell me a whole lot, but telling me, hey, did you know that early literacy is a really big problem because XYZ? We need your help to, be able to support 30 more kids next year with our after school program. So get people to buy in and understand that you're part of the solution, and if they support you, they're also part of that solution. And I really love this quote by Amy Jo Martin talking about social media. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. So again, social media, it's more like a telephone than a television, which leads me to kind of my next big tip that's going to help you with engagement is engage back. Are you responding to all of your direct messages that come through? Are you responding to all of the comments? Do you like, share, or comment on your followers' content? Instagram, especially if you're stuck growing your Instagram following, spend a couple of minutes every couple of days and go through your followers and like a couple of their photos, leave a couple comments, search for some hashtags that could be relevant to your organization and see what other people are posting under that hashtag and engage with them. That's going to help you expand your reach. And that can help you find new people as well. If you're struggling to respond to people quickly because you're a small team, Facebook and Instagram in particular have some really great automations that you can set up. So from your inbox, whether you're on Facebook Creator Studios or your Facebook page, you can get automated responses set up so you can have a pre-worded message. So when someone messages you, it's like, hey, Lisa, thanks for reaching out. Someone from our team will be responding in You know, if it's going to be a while, maybe give them a range, you know, 3 to 5 business days, or ASAP. You know, if you are looking for help, please go and send them back to your website or give them a phone number to call. If you're looking to support us, learn more here, right? So that way they're at least getting a response from you right away, and it gives you a little bit of time to go back and actually respond to their message if you're swamped. You can also on Facebook set up frequently asked questions. So before they even go to message you, there'll be pre-selected questions that you've entered in that they can ask, and then it'll have your pre-written response. So for example, there's a scholarship fund that we work with. We get a lot of messages about when's the deadline? How do I apply? Where do I apply? Do I have to be in college to apply, etc. So we just set up a automated response FAQ so people can just go right in and get that information. It drives them back to their website without us having to kind of do the labor of responding to each individual message for those types of things. So take advantage of that. But just in general, engage with people on social. It shouldn't just be you posting and people saying, yeah, you're amazing. You should be responding back. If people are leaving you comments, sometimes, you know, if they're like, oh, I love your organization, this is great. You know, thanks, Lisa. What's your favorite thing about our organization? Or, you know, why do you support us? Try to ask open-ended questions to get them to continue to talk back to you, right? Another thing that really helps with engagement, I mentioned it earlier, algorithms have really changed. The days of posting on Facebook and having it go viral, it does happen. You know, the ice bucket challenge was great, but it's a lot harder than it used to be. Only about 1 to 3% of your Facebook followers will even see your content in your feed. So our way around that would be to amplify with paid spend. So if you have that Facebook pixel set up, that's great. You can retarget people that have been on your website with your advertising. You can also upload your own donor list to Facebook and create an audience to retarget them with ads that way. You can do lookalike audiences of those people. We're actually going to dive into a lot of this ad spend side of things in my webinar next week, next Tuesday. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to join in on that. And when we talk about Facebook advertising, I do want to call out, it's not just on Facebook. You can advertise on Facebook and Instagram as well as third-party sites. So there's a variety. Twitter you can advertise on, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all of that as well. But I will say kind of across the board, Facebook tends to give me the biggest bang for my buck, and it has the most sophisticated retargeting options. So I do tend to lean this way most of the time. To use Ads Manager, if you don't already, you'll need to have a business manager set up. So if you don't have one of those, you just go to business.facebook.com, you would create one for your organization. Setting up business manager is great because if you have multiple people within your organization, it's easier to assign everybody. It's just a little bit more professional versus trying to add everyone's personal Facebook accounts to manage the page directly. So I would recommend doing that kind of regardless if you haven't already, but if you want to use Ads Manager, you definitely need to have a business manager to access it. Ads Manager is going to be different than hitting the boost button. If you're spending money on boosts, please don't. Please invest in spending a little bit of time and learning how to use Ads Manager. You're going to have a lot more targeting capabilities and you're going to get a better ROI. So Ads Manager is separate. If you are really unfamiliar with Ads Manager and you're kind of trying to DIY, Facebook Blueprint is a great free resource to learn about social media advertising. Facebook runs all of the courses themselves. They have webinars you can join. There's virtual classes you can take. There's quizzes you can try. There's support tutorials. So you can teach yourself if you want to. So that's a really great place to go for that. And again, kind of final note before we dive into questions. In general with social media, I think your efforts should be laddering up to your goals. So as you're kind of going through and reviewing your social channels, taking inventory of everything, you know, if you're going to spend time on this, what are you getting out of it? What are your results? Are you tracking them? Are you talking to the right people? Is your, you know, do you need your social media to be donor facing, but you're really talking more to your clients? You know, maybe that needs to shift. So just kind of think about what your goals are and if your social efforts are laddering up to In terms of upcoming webinars, we have some really great ones coming up for you. Lemon Light with Chloe tomorrow. Lemon Light's a really great video production company. They're going to be talking about some great tips for engaging fundraising events online. We've got Abby on Thursday from QGive. She's got a really great one, some real examples and ideas of nonprofits doing some really great virtual fundraising. Following week, you can join me again on Tuesday. We're going to talk about leveraging social media to promote your virtual events. So that's going to be a little bit more into the tactical. We're going to talk about different types of advertising and different techniques and best practices. So a little bit more nitty gritty on that one if you want to join me there. And then at the very end, we've got a power panel. We've got some really great people together to answer other questions that you may have and just have a broader conversation about fall campaigns and virtual events in general. So all free. If you want to sign up for any of those, please do. But now I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So you tell me what you want to talk about.
So here's one that's kind of on the managing your organic. So what's the best way to deal with negative comments on Facebook or Instagram?
Yeah, that's a good one, and that's a really tough one. I personally struggle with this sometime as well. I think it depends on what the comment is. For example, there's some organizations I work with that are really LGBT plus focused, and sometimes you just get crazy, horrible, hateful comments from people. Things like that, I don't have the patience for. I delete it, and if it's really bad, I ban that person from the page. If you're gonna tell someone that they deserve to die, I don't have the time for it. However, there are exceptions. So sometimes if people are leaving comments that are a little bit negative, I see this a lot when I talk about things like domestic violence. People just aren't always educated on it. So you'll see something about, we're talking about a protection order, and someone's like, well, why don't they just leave? Sometimes that's a really great opportunity to educate people that just don't know. So sometimes I'll politely respond, and sometimes it opens up a great conversation. Another example of an organization I worked with not that long ago, they do a lot with immigration, and someone had left a kind of negative comment about, coming over here illegally and et cetera, which just wasn't really accurate for what the organization does. So that was a really great opportunity for us to respond really nicely in the comments and say, hey, this is actually the reality that a lot of these people are going with, this is what's going on. And that opened a really great dialogue. And that person at the end actually said, wow, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about this. There are other instances as well where sometimes it's better to take it offline. Especially with hotels, we did this all the time. If someone's upset that their room's dirty, you don't want that comment thread, right? So it's just like, hi, so-and-so, we're going to send you a direct message, or feel free to message us here, or feel free to email us, right? So depending on what it is, it might be better to try to take it offline. Just sort of depends. Use your gut. And if something's truly just hateful, don't be afraid to ban someone. Like I said, if someone's saying that, someone doesn't deserve to live because of their sexual orientation, just gonna ban you.
Okay. Is there a time when you would prefer to hide a comment versus delete it?
Yeah. So sometimes if it's not super hateful, but maybe just not really relevant, or basically if it's something not overly damaging, but not really sure how to respond, or maybe you're going to send them a direct message to follow up, but you can still hide it. If you hide it, their friends will still see the post, they'll still see the post, but anyone not connected to them won't see it. So. Okay.
So here's another question. So we have a attendee who's using a lot, it says, I create a lot in Canva. Do you have an opinion on using their scheduler?
I think if it's for Facebook and Instagram, I would still use the Facebook Creator Studios just because it's going to give you more functionality because Facebook built it. So you can add that donate button right to the post from that. If you sell product, you can tag the product in the post, right? There's a lot of advantages to using Facebook Creator Studios. But if you're doing everything from Canva and that works for you and your engagement numbers are good, keep rocking. It's test and learn. See if there's a difference. If you're testing from if you're scheduling from Canva, is your engagement rate better or worse than when you're scheduling from somewhere else, right? So test it out.
Okay, awesome. So does anyone else have any other questions for Erica?
Happy to help.